Good evening and welcome to Grammar Video 3. So you should be on this video if you are an incoming sophomore and you've already completed videos 1 and 2. So just like my disclaimer for videos 1 and 2, I just wanted to remind you that this is not meant to be a thorough teaching of these concepts. Rather, these grammar videos are meant to review grammar concepts that should have been taught during your freshman year. However, if for some reason you're a transfer student and you have not hit upon these concepts, please feel free to email me and I will get you resources for a more comprehensive teaching of these concepts. Okay, so right now we are going to review dependent clauses versus independent. So we're going to review clauses and compound and complex sentences. So up first on the list is a review of dependent clauses versus an independent clause. So just to review, a dependent clause has a subject plus a verb, but it cannot stand alone. So it's dependent, so cannot stand alone. For example, when I tie my shoes. When I tie my shoes, it has a subject and a verb, but when I tie my shoes is not a complete thought. It is a complete thought and therefore cannot stand alone. Whereas on the other hand, with an independent clause, you have a subject plus a verb, and it's a complete thought. So in other words, an independent clause can stand by itself. So independent clause is a complete thought. Okay. So I just want to give an example of a dependent and independent clause. So dependent clause, an example of this would be when Susie runs. Okay? So dependent clause, you have a couple of items. First of all, you have your subject. You also have a verb, which is runs. And what should clue you in that this is a dependent clause is when Susie runs cannot stand by itself. Another thing you want to look for in a dependent clause is a dependent clause always starts with a subordinating conjunction. So you'll want to review back Grammar Video 1 if you need a review of subordinating conjunction. So dependent clause always begins with a subordinating conjunction. Okay, so that's how you know it's a dependent clause, is if you have a subject and a verb and it cannot stand by itself. Again, something else that you want to look for, if it starts with a subordinating conjunction, if your clause begins with a subordinating conjunction like when or if or after or whatever else is on that list, if your clause begins with a subordinating conjunction, what you have is a dependent clause. Okay, whereas with an independent clause, you're not going to begin with a subordinating conjunction. Independent clause would be something like, I ran to the store. Okay, so how you can tell it's an independent clause is, first of all, I have my subject, I have my verb, and I ran to the store is a complete thought. All right? Whereas with a dependent clause, because I'm beginning that clause with a subordinated conjunction, a dependent clause would not be a complete thought. All right, let's go through different types of sentences. Let's go through compound sentences first. So compound sentence, you would have an independent clause plus another independent clause. Okay, so in a compound sentence, you basically have two complete sentences put together in one sentence. Okay, there are two main ways to join the independent clauses. So two ways to join the independent clauses. Way number one is by a comma plus a coordinating conjunction. So you can join the independent clauses with a comma coordinating conjunction. So you would have an independent clause, and then you would have a comma, and then you would have your coordinating conjunction. So remember, a coordinating conjunction is different than subordinating conjunction. A coordinating conjunction would be like and, or but, or yet, and so forth. So don't get that mixed up. If you have a coordinating conjunction, what you have is you probably have two independent clauses joined together. So remember, independent clause, you would join it with a comma and a coordinating conjunction. And these are some examples of the coordinating conjunctions. And then you would have your independent clause following that comma and coordinating conjunction. All right. So another way to join the independent clauses is with the semicolon. So you could have an independent clause, semicolon, plus another independent clause. Okay? All right. So here's an example. I like cookies, but Sue likes muffins. Okay, this would be an example of a compound sentence. So I have my independent clause, I like cookies. Okay. But I also have an independent, but it's also joined together with the other independent clause, Sue likes cookies. Okay, so notice I have two, so in this compound sentence, I have two independent clauses. So I like cookies and Sue likes muffins. And it's joined together by a comma plus the coordinated conjunction but. Okay, so note, my coordinating conjunction is not part of an independent clause. So just a note, coordinating conjunction is not part of the independent clause. All right. Okay, next we're going to move on to complex sentences. So now we're moving on to complex sentences. So a complex sentence, in a complex sentence you either have a dependent clause plus an independent clause, or you have an independent clause plus a dependent clause. Okay, so a couple of things on this, a couple of notes. That's going to be really important. A subordinated conjunction will always start off your dependent clause and is a part of your dependent clause. So your subordinating conjunction, that's going to begins the dependent clause and is part of the dependent clause. Okay, so don't get this mixed up. Make sure you know the difference between a subordinating conjunction and a coordinating conjunction. If you have a subordinating conjunction beginning the clause, you have a dependent clause. But if you have a coordinating conjunction, the coordinating conjunction is probably just combining the two clauses together. So make sure you look at your list for subordinating conjunctions and coordinating conjunctions, so that way you can tell the difference between a dependent clause and an independent clause. Okay, compound complex sentences. Now just to know, your sophomore English teacher will not be expecting you to know about compound complex sentences. In fact, your grammar videos will pick up right at compound and complex sentences. So while you're not going to be expected to know it at the beginning of the summer, I did want to give you a little introduction to it. So just give you a brief introduction. Basically, the compound complex sentence, you have a sentence that's both compound and complex. In a compound complex sentence, you have at least one dependent clause and at least two independent clauses. All right. And again, I'm not expecting you to know about compound complex sentences right now. You'll start that off freshman year, or sorry, you'll begin talking about compound complex sentences during your sophomore year. I just wanted to give you a little introduction. Okay. So for the practice problems, what I want you to do is underline the dependent clause once and the independent clause twice. All right. You can cross out the second part of the instructions. Sorry, there was a typo there. So guys, on the sentences for grammar video 3, these sentences are all complex sentences. I just want you to be able to recognize a dependent clause versus an independent clause. So again, with these problems, these are all complex sentences. You make yourself a note. These are all complex sentences. And mainly, I'm just wanting you to realize the difference between a dependent clause and an independent clause. All right. If you want to check your problems with me, feel free to email me for the solution guide, or feel free to email me if you want the answers to the problems. And I hope you have a blessed evening. God bless you.